Hi guys. Wow. Face reveal. RoboReplay guy. Woo. You'll be seeing a lot more of my face over the next 5 weeks as I have 5 episodes of this new series that I'm launching called Coffee with Coaches planned out. And so I realized I didn't really give much of an introduction to what we're doing here in the first episode of this, but basically I'm going to be releasing a series called Coffee with Coaches. This is something that I'll be trying to do with every event that I go to, off-season or on-season, and trying to reach out to coaches who are willing to have take the time to do an interview with me and just talk to them about what their team does that makes them so successful, right? And so this 5-part series that you'll see for Battlecry, I talked to 6328's drive coach, Dave Powers, 694's drive coach, Joe Blay, 1768's drive coach, Aaron Studham, Connor McBride from Team 166, I'm sure you guys know him from Fun, as well as Brad Wall from Team 88. And these are all like really incredible teams. And so I wanted to talk to them about what makes them so special and what they do that makes them so competitive and what everyone else can learn from their success, right? Because a lot of times we have this misunderstanding that these teams are all mentor built and the students don't do anything. I really wanted to dispel that, as well as also understand that every single one of these coaches that I'm talking to are drive coaches. So what do they do behind the glass that makes them so successful as well? So that's my entire intro for this. I'll be only putting this in this one episode. So have fun. I hope you guys have as much fun watching this and learn as much from watching this as I had and learned from interviewing them. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Hello, I am here with Dave Powers, legendary person in first from Team 6328, was working on Citrus when they had the incredible Einstein streak. I mean, just absolute powerhouses are teams that you've been on, and you're now coaching 6328. How is that like moving from New England back to Cali and then back to New England again?
I think a lot of it's been luck, right? Mm-hmm. I've been very lucky to kind of be in the places that I've been when I've been there. So in 2020, when I joined 6328, they had already found some competitive success and were kind of on the up. And I really got to join and work with, they've got the core group there is like absolutely incredible. And then in 2022, 2023, when I moved out to California, getting to work with, I went out there and joined a startup out in Davis. Mm-hmm. Getting to work with Mike and Brooke and Steve and all the rest of them it was a learning experience like no other, right? Yeah. Getting to go there and see how their program has been functioning for, over a decade. Oh, yeah. And it's been really interesting to see their progression and how they handled it. There's 100 plus kids on that team. 6328 is much smaller. We're large. We're like 40 kids, but not like substantially larger. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting to see the dynamic of when I came back to 6328, we just of course copy a bunch of the Citrus stuff. It's been a great learning experience for me to come back and try and like implement some different stuff. And even across the country, there's like the students they respond a little bit differently on for motivation and what gets them excited and the different projects that they want to work on, and getting to see the two sides of it and get to kind of like work our way up to be very competitive and on both sides of it was really interesting.
And so when you're looking at like a team like 1678, who is like the ginormous 100-kid team, and you guys are still relatively large for New England, right? Like how do you, like what is something that specifically you've taken to like manage kids? Like have you taken some sort of structure from them?
Yeah,
or is
absolutely.
It just
like... So Citrus, I think a large part of this success, there's many elements that make them successful, from their coaching to, just their school support and in a large bit, their student structure and how they organize all of that all the way down from, their captains and then all of their sub-team leads and how they organize all of that. It's primarily like peer-to-peer based, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be pretty surprised how few mentors are on Citrus. You know what I mean? It's only like a dozen. There's 100 kids or something.
Wow.
So the only way that works is that you have to have a super robust student leadership structure, and from the top down, the captains all the way to like, the people that are, just anything.
Yeah.
And we've mirrored a lot of that, and it's really helped us do more of, and I think a lot of teams can share in this, where you'll end up having this like core group of students that are working on it. But what's really interesting with Citrus is you walk into the shop and there's like, at any given day, there's dozens of students, and they're all working on like a single critical path. So when you think about competitive success with Citrus, it's because that whole group is moving on one unified goal. So we've really tried to mirror that on 6328, and we've spun up our own student structure. We have a mentor now who just focuses on student experience. Juju.
Oh, really? Wow.
She's our student experience lead mentor, and all she focuses on is getting like all of the kids involved in all of the trainings and supporting our student leadership structure and helping them build out training curriculums, and then the kids get to run the training curriculums, and you can see it trickles down.
And trickle down, you have the pipeline.
And the bit that's really interesting is, those kids now get to leave the team with not just having built like a dozen robots or something over the course of their 4 years, but they really get to impact all of the rest of the younger generation of students. And we tell them that, like, that's the legacy you want to learn. When realistically, internally, for me and all the mentors, it's like, it just makes my job a little bit easier. But you know what I mean? It's the kids really get to, and it teaches them great leadership skills. So that structure with student leadership that Citrus has really developed, we've mirrored a lot of it. And I talk to Mike every day, and even yesterday I talked to him on the phone. Like, we're doing a bunch of like picking new students and talking about how we're better organizing all of our stuff, and he's been great with giving feedback and helping us with all that, and really unlocks a lot.
Yeah. So then when you're looking at like, obviously this helps with consistency, right?
Yeah.
But when you're looking in terms of like engineering, the fact that you guys are able to make such different robots, I think. Like, I look at the 2023 robot with like the swinging arm, and you guys get to Einstein. You have completely different robot in 2022, completely different game. You're getting to Einstein. 2024, you're getting to Einstein. With very different robots, very different ways that they seem like they got thought up. How do you keep that consistency, not in just student experience, but also in like engineering and making sure that you're always coming up with good ideas?
Yeah, I think that's something that's not really talked about in the program, is just like, this is kind of a project management and execution competition, really. Like, that's kind of like, it seems like a robotics competition, but if you look at on Einstein every year, it's not like it's the exact same robot that goes out there, right?
Not,
like, you'll see some like threads with 1690 and 4414, like they had similar robots, but then you look across the field with 2910 in 1323, and they're a completely different architecture, right? But they're also competing at that high level. So we think a lot less about the actual, like, probably would surprise a lot of people, where we're just like, we pick an architecture that fulfills all of the requirements, but our main focus is just like executing and just making sure that it's like the best possible version of whatever architecture we're going to pick, right? So in 2023, that's a perfect example where that was completely different from the meta, right? With the double jointed arm. But, Cam and Connor and Max and a lot of the mentors that really drove that mechanical design of it, they knew that their strengths were in doing these like rotary joints. They were less comfortable with an elevator, so they just decided, like, we can execute on this. And that's really what you want to do, is as a team, you want to sort out what your strengths are, and you want to sort out where the balance is, where you can say, like, we want to be ambitious, but really in the season you're just trying to execute, and you're just trying to make whatever solution you pick as efficient as possible. So and it's similar on Citrus, right? Like, it's, if you look at their robots and compared to a lot of other robots, they're probably, 22 is a good example, right? No turret. It's just, we hadn't built a turret. We built a turret in 2020 off season, 2021 off season for a 2020 game. Weren't particularly happy with it. And it was funny, we were at Chezzy Champs in 21 or whatever, the first competition back, and we built this like swerve turret robot for a 2020 game, and 973 just absolutely smoked us with their tank drive, no turret, just doing cycles back and forth, and we're sitting there like scanning the hood of our turret, could not. So then the next year, when it was 22, we were like, we got to play to our strengths. Turret, software, still got to work on it. We should do some more off-season projects. We know we can execute on this simple design, so just go for that and just try and like execute on all of your strengths. And it takes a lot of like thought in how you're going to accurately sort out what your strengths are, right? So that's always an interesting balance of, you need to be real with yourself, but also you want to be a little ambitious. But you gotta be, it takes just many years of experience, right?
And so when your original architecture doesn't end up working, how do you figure out, like this year, for example, you redesigned for the ground intake because it's just so prevalent at Worlds. And so how do you decide, you're like, okay, we love this robot, it's incredibly successful. I mean, you guys were like almost, you probably could have won district champs if something fell your way. But then you decided, okay, we want to go into Worlds with a ground intake. How does the process of saying, we love this robot, but we don't think we can win with it?
Yeah, so when we set our goals at the beginning of the year with the whole team, and you know, we've been very lucky to find competitive success over the last couple of years. That's not just like all of the work and it's similar with Citrus, similar with any other high level team. You're really, you're just putting yourself in a position to get lucky. For us, when we think about like what our goal is for the season, we write down like 3 things. And this year it was like, you know, we want to get out of our division in champs. So when we got to DCMP, and at that point, you know, you're chatting with all the rest of the top. You're just like seeing what everybody else is putting out, and you kind of see the numbers that are the balance of everything, and what it's going to take to actually like be, because you know, getting out of your division usually equates to like if you want to control your own destiny, you got to be like 1 or 2 in the division. You got to be either rank 1 or be the obvious choice, right? So it's like, okay, what does that take to do that? You look at our numbers with the Hopper. Although they were very good in comparison of the grand scheme of things, we knew that we were going to like lag short of what a 1323 was playing at. You see them putting up like 30-something game pieces, right? It's crazy. And we had not even come close to touching that. So at that point it was, you know, we kind of have nothing to lose. And as a team we discussed like, you know, we're going to do this. It's going to be very hard. And there's probably like a 75 or 80% chance that it doesn't. Like we just can't execute on it, right? And, you know, it's always... You're always just gonna be. You need to be okay with taking the risk, right? If you want to like operate it in that mentality. And for us this year, champs was really difficult, but I think it was a great experience for the team to actually go out, and the kids just like through all the adversity with the, you know, the intake was exploding, the elevator was exploding, and it was just we couldn't get a good solid match out. But then at the grand scheme of things, it all ended, and everybody thinks about it. And like we sit down with the student leadership and they're like, no, we're glad that we tried to do it. Because if we went out there with the Hopper and we ranked like 7th or whatever and then we lose in like semifinals, and you're like, oh, we didn't give it everything we possibly had. So it's that mentality that we're trying to balance with like the reality of what's executable. And this year we just like bit off a little bit too much to chew, you know? But that's part of the game. You got to kind of like take the gamble and take the risk. And a lot of the top teams do it. It's just their process of executing on all of this stuff is so polished that they can do more and more. I mean, you look at like 4414, right? Entire new robot in between their runs. How do you possibly like comprehend that? It's because their system for building the robots is so efficient that they can do like, once they learn what is really, really like efficient and what's going to take it there, they just execute on making that happen, right? In a lot of the top teams, in something that, like, you know, you steal from the best, like invent the rest, right? That's so real at every level of the game. And you just got to find out what's going to be the best for champs, and then just like try and execute to match that level.
And so then we're talking a lot about design, right? But you are a drive coach. What do you think what is the most valuable thing that you bring to your team as a coach behind the glass for your students?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think of my role on the team is I kind of help. You know, I joke with everybody, I'm just kind of like a project manager, right? I like really try and balance the wanting to be able to pull every little, like, help everybody reach their maximum potential, right? So I think people would be pretty surprised that, like, you know, I don't do any CAD. I do, like, the 6328 design, like, principle is at the beginning we'll sit down, we'll do architecture design. So at that point I'll be doing a lot of 2D sketching. But then it gets to a point where I kind of like hand off, and then we have a group of students that kind of take those super sketches and those 2D sketches and they expand it out. So if you're looking at it from a competition standpoint, I'm really helping put all of the students in the position to be able to do what they're really good at in helping them execute on it. So I'll build a lot of systems around, we need this year we had a new strategy lead, which is something that we've never really focused on before.
Yeah.
So helping educate those students, give them resources, and kind of during the event, just supporting them in that role as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what I'm doing. Similar with the driver and similar. And then we have like a pretty ingrained like feedback circle where we'll sit down and it's like, the kids, if we have a bad match, kids will be all pissed because they want to win.
Of course, yeah.
But it's, we can sit down and watch the match, and we have our like lead strategy mentor. He comes in, reviews the footage with all of us. He's like, Dave, you missed this call, or like, and we try to be very candid with each other. And that is, I think part of my role is just trying to maintain that, right, and keep everybody moving in a unified direction is really my focus. But it's, for me, success is like a student coming in and even if we do poorly at the event, if they've tried something new and they've got out of their comfort zone, and then by the time the event ends, they feel like comfortable in that role. And my goal is always like get the student to the point of where they can educate like the next generation of it. So that's a lot of the focus, and it's a lot of the focus of all of our mentors, right? I think it'd be pretty rare to see, like Jonah sitting in the pit writing code, or you know what I mean, like doing electrical stuff. We try and make sure that the students can handle it. Of course, we'll work with them side by side. But yeah, a lot of our focus, on the design side and the drive coach side is just helping give feedback and helping the students like polish their craft.
Yeah, and so I don't know if anyone has seen, but the way that your drive team works, like operation-wise, it's so vastly different in terms of like the way that you do it. Of like, we're selecting that there's a piece here, and the robot's just gonna know that we're scoring this now. How do you even think of something that advanced?
So we're trying to play at a very high level, and I think that it's always like you're just trying to like leapfrog the next generation of stuff, and I think that the stuff with the Mac Mini and doing this like all this crazy algorithm to automatically determine like where the next best place is to do it. There's a balance that you're going to strike with trying to automate a bunch of it, but then also make it very useful for the driver. So we kind of go in the high end, and then we'll start pulling stuff back, and we're very lucky to have like Jonah, and our lead software student Surya is like amazing, right? So we'll always sit down and just think of like what are the elements of the game that we think are going to take a bunch of effort from the drive team, right? So me as a driver coach, I'm thinking when we sat down and we first got the game, and then talking with Matthew, our driver, and then software, it's like, okay, if we're really running like 2 or 3 second cycles, the idea of having to think of the next place that you have to place it is probably going to be pretty difficult. And there's a chance that you're going to have to stop and think about it for a second.
Yeah, of course.
If you lose a second and you're only running 5 second cycles, like if you do that every single time, you lose multiple cycles. So then it's like, okay, what can we do to automate it? And then this year we went too far with the automation, right? So it was literally like you press the button and it scored on one half of the reef, it would score anywhere. But then you think about like, okay, now how do you tie in where your alliance partners are? It's like, okay, you need to dial it back so the driver will drive in front of the reef face, just that reef face that they're going to score on. And then you can execute from there. And then it's just tailoring the automation to be, just take out all of those like sticking points for the driver. So there's a really big balance of trying to build all of these systems, but largely we just think of them as like supplements for the driver and focus on it like that. But I don't think that anything we do is like, beyond the realm. We just like probably think about stuff a little bit differently than most people, and a lot of that is, Jonah and Surya and a lot of them are, when they analyze the game, they know like all the little bits of it so well. So it's regularly I walk in and I'll be like, Jonah, what if Matthew just pressed the button and then Jonah like what if this always like Jonah, what if Matthew just pressed the button sentence is something that we joke about all the time, but it's like, it is in a lot of ways. It's like when we had the hopper, it was like you press 2 buttons. You press the button and it drives to the loading station. You press the other button and it drives and it scores. It was like, okay, Matthew's always like they're automating him out of a job. But,
And so, I mean, talking about automating out of a job, right? A lot of teams this year decided to go with the double human player strategy. Like, I think 125 at least was the one that I remember most. And it really helped them be able to just like anywhere you're going, we will be able to give you a coral confirmed. We don't have to rely on our partners to feed you coral.
Yeah.
Is that something that you thought of, or
Yeah.
is that like washed out because you're like, we don't think that this is viable with the way we want to do our operation?
It's actually funny because it's a chicken and egg thing where you think about this automation and then you think about, okay, now you have to have the operator who's sitting there tracking all the game pieces. So we're down a human player. Last year we ran 2 human players. And this year we wanted the operator because we thought that like the upside of having the automation of determining where to score next and all of that was going to outweigh the potential of having somebody like fumble when a partner like fumble loading a robot. So then you think about it from a design perspective. Okay, how can we design the robot to be like the easiest robot to load like in the world, right? So that's how we kind of ended up with the hopper. And realistically, that robot could load from all 4 sides, right? It was just like you slam it to the wall, and the kid just needs to like remotely drop it towards the robot, and it'll suck it right in. So you can kind of balance this like how this trade-off of all of this stuff and determine what's going to be the most beneficial. And I say this like it was like one very clear-cut conversation, right? It was not, right? So it's like you go through the entire build season where you're like, it was kind of a realization where it was like, okay, we need to make this robot easier to load. So it's like, okay, should we do the big funnel? And maybe you lose a little bit of ultimate efficiency of the like straight V funnel, but then you potentially open up the ability to like more easily load around defense and more easily load with your partners who don't know the nuances of the system and stuff like that. So we think pretty deeply about all of that stuff, like kind of constantly and perpetually, and we're not afraid to make changes to the robot based on those assumptions.
Yeah, of course. And so when you're considering a game like this, right, pick and place, 2023 as well, a pick and place game, how do you shift the way that you are like coaching and like stuff you're saying behind the glass versus like a shooter game of like 22 or 24?
Yeah.
And like, what is the difference that you feel in coaching of like your drive team behind a shooter game versus a pick and place, where like pick and place is more be precise, make sure you're actually getting the piece on, because if you miss one, you're like, oh no, that is like a very significant draw versus like a shooter.
I think that pick and place games tend to end up being more like you fall into like an alliance coaching role. Most of them are. I mean, we think about it as if I need to sit there and tell Matthew what to do, like we haven't done enough training. Right. And if like Matthew is fiddling and fumbling with the like actually scoring, like we don't have enough automation for it, right? Like, so we try and strike that balance. I think it's even with it being pick and place and even with it being like a shooting game, we kind of always tailor it towards the like what's the execution part of it. And I can't speak to 23, but in 24 with like my primary role was just focusing on those like boost cycles and how to like telling our partners when to come back and telling Matthew when to like switch and go and do an amp boost and trying to find that balance. And then this year it was really executing where the defense was and helping him avoid it and saying like switch sides of the field or pivot. And typically I always like go climb Matthew. There's 10 seconds left. And he's always like, can I do one more game piece? I'm like, dude, that L1 is not worth missing. Like,
exactly.
So we have this conversation every single time because he's like, want to fill the reef,
of course,
So it's a balance game to game. But yeah, I don't think there's anything like too specific. We try and think of it more granularly on the like strategy thing. And we're also pretty like we'll pivot a lot. Like sometimes we'll understand that like we need to be focusing. Me as a drive coach focus more on like helping the whole alliance like orchestrate very well together. And sometimes it's very much like I'm just helping like Anna observe all of the coral that's being scored on the reef, because if she gets behind a little bit, then I can just like she's holding it and I can be like L5 or L4 is done. Like there's 5 on L4, there's 5 on L3, so she can just mark those as done. And some of it's granular, but a lot of it is just like whole
big general picture stuff. So like, I don't know how to ask this question. When your drive team is like, when you're like stressed behind the glass, right? I mean, you guys, the way that you're talking about your drive team, it seems like they don't get stressed very often. But what is something that you do to help alleviate stress? And I'm assuming it's a lot harder in like earlier competitions.
Yeah.
But is there something that you do or like a routine that you have that like gets them to calm down, we're locked back in, then we just go for the end?
Yeah, I'll think back on the like, Matthew's very good. He's very calm, collected, and very rarely like crashes out over anything. Like even when it's going catastrophic, right? He's pretty locked in. I think back to my time on Citrus, and part of my role was, Mike drive coaches, and I worked a lot with the drive team on like giving them feedback, and then like, when stuff doesn't go well. And I think back to Port Unimi in 2023, where it was, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened. So we ended up with 4414, right? They're great.
Beautiful event.
Amazing robot. And then we go out there and we like instantaneously get a red card.
Oh my God.
Right?
The tipping.
In the drive team, up until that point, it hadn't gotten, like, we'd kind of been coasting through events with, we end up with 254, and then it's like, it's far from like wrapped up, but it was rare to see them in a lower bracket. So Yi came to me at one point, and I think it was after we were like we just like weren't clicking as an alliance, and we could see like 4481 and their alliance was like really clicking. Yeah,
they were good,
right? Like they were kind of coming out of nowhere and clicking, and we were like, oh, if we get back, like we gotta go through them.
Yeah.
And Yi, the driver, came to me, who I think is like the most collected and probably well practiced driver in like the history of FRC. I've seen that kid's put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours on the robots. And he comes to me and he was like, I feel a little funny. And I'm like, yeah, bro, like this is very stressful. And you could see that it was the first time he was like not the first time he's experienced stress, but in that circumstance, right? So we walked outside, and I'm a big like the Headspace app. I wish I had like a code but we just sat down, and it was me, the two drivers, and then one of the other mentors, and we just like did a funny little like meditation together. And then my focus is like we just try and make everything very lighthearted and joke around with each other to try and like I'll try and like do a little joke or do something silly or something to kind of pull it out of the moment. And pulling it out of the moment just gives you like a moment of separation from it all that lets you like back away, reevaluate a little bit, and then you can refocus it on what's important. And we don't have particular like rituals or anything that we do, but a lot of that is like, even myself, I'll just like step outside and collect myself and try and encourage the students to really like find that balance. Because I do think that it's being a student and doing this, particularly if you're out on the Einstein, you're out on Einstein, right? Like you have tens of thousands of people watching you. Yeah. And in some cases, you're like the one driver doing this, right? And it's a level of stress that I think most students don't ever experience, right? Like being that young.
Yeah, exactly.
So just reminding them that, like, we're here as a team, right? And like, yes, we've put you as the person that gets to control the robot, but like, Jonah and Surya are driving that robot just as much as you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like with it being automated, and like Emily worked on the hopper, and like she's out there driving. Like in some ways, so you got to try and remind them to like, it's not just all on you, right? There's a lot of different elements of it.
Yeah, of course.
And try and balance that and remind them. But yeah, it's an interesting. I really enjoy working with the kids because all of them react to it very differently. Yeah. And we've just kind of developed this, sometimes Juju will come in and, help with the student experience and like helps kids sort out their emotions with all of it. And she's been really great to help balance all of that.
And then you're talking about like hundreds of hours on drivers. Is there like a point at which you think there should be like a robot made for a driver to just like start practicing throughout the season for like in-home practice to make sure they have enough time?
Yeah. I mean, the 22 season, I feel for me, was one of my favorites being with Citrus because it was like, we went in there, the game came out, and then it was instantly like this game is familiar enough that we could probably like draw a very simple solution on the board and just, they've got the system that perfectly executes building the robot, right? Yeah. Like that's not the amount where they're spending all of their time doing it, where I think a lot of teams are spending a lot of their time building the robot. Yeah. So, like, Mike, the kids, the strategy team, me, like all sat down, drew something on the whiteboard, and it basically just looked like 973 from like that 973 robot that smoked us. And we were like, we could build this in 2 or 3 days. And we basically did with the Alpha robot. And then basically with, I think it was like day 5 or day 6 of build season, like the software kids have a robot that they've brought up and they're running autos, right?
Oh my, wow.
And then basically as soon as we get that 5-ball auto, which was the big thing, we released it like the second week or something, then Yi just starts driving it, Yi and Helena, and they just nonstop every day for a couple hours and like are just focused on running practice matches and a lot of drills that we think are year specific. So I'll set up like silly little drills where it's like, you know, you put 4 balls in line, you got to go and pick each one and spit it out, and we'll do, you know, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of cycles of that, and then start doing practice matches, and we record every practice match and we document and we score it. And then any outliers where it's like we've scored very little or we've scored a lot more than we normally do, we'll evaluate those as a drive team. And we'll really dive in deep and evaluate like where we struggle with and then focus on those elements of it. And then so there's really never, because you build this like Pareto of things that you're like not good at, right? It never ends, right? Because you can just like continue getting better at something. And we really look for students that just want to do that, right? It's like they want to be world champs, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that you talk to like RC and 1323, those kids probably have more. Like he mentioned to me that their kids are in there like basically 2 hours a day, every single day, all year, not just during build season, right? And you can tell, you watch that robot, it's like that kid does not miss, right? He just absolutely doesn't miss. And you know, you got to build the program around supporting those kids that really want to like push it and get there. So it's an interesting thing, but the kids that want it, they really want it, and then they'll put in the hours.
And so, last question for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. What is the funniest or weirdest thing or experience or memory that you have from all your years in first?
Oh man. Okay, Madtown in it would have been 21, I think. So Citrus has these fruit suits. They call them the fruit suits, right? So like one of them is like a lemon. They have the lime. They have like, you know, various citrus fruits that are the mascots or whatever. And we built I think 3 or 4 robots for that event. A couple clone robots, and then the comp robot. I think we took 4 robots to that event, and then I offhandedly told the kids that were kind of like lagging behind a little bit on the group that I was working with. I was like, if you guys can execute this and we can make it to the finals, I'll wear the lime suit for the finals. And then sure enough, fast forward like 2 weeks, I'm getting to drive coach this team, standing there wearing the lime suit.
Oh my god!
And then I look across the glass, and we were playing another one of the Citrus teams. And like their whole drive team's got all the fruit suits on, and it was just a great moment where I was like, you know, it's really fun to compete at a really high level, particularly when you can make it a lot of fun. And that, like, I have been chasing a moment like that ever since, because it was one of those, like, this is why I do it, right? It's like you get to have a lot of fun with a lot of people that are really passionate about something that you're also passionate about. It means a lot. All right. That is all the time we have. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for spending the time sitting
really
down with me. Appreciate it.
And good luck at this event. I'm sure you guys are probably going to win it again, like you did last year.
We'll see.
But, of course, that comes out to a lot. Of course, Thank you guys for watching. Have a lovely day.